In this story, our main character is forced to become an adventurer whether he likes it or not. That's because his little sister has been struck by a deadly illness. To afford her treatment, he needs 500 million. Even without any abilities, he decides to enter dungeons, defeat monsters, and sell whatever loot he can get. Yeah, sounds like a death wish already. That would normally be an impossible task. However, he eventually discovers that he is the reincarnation of an ancient archmage. Even though he lacks skill at the beginning, he'll receive support from a few girls along the way. This series is seriously good, guys. It's got waifus, a progression system, and a protagonist who isn't a wimp. So go ahead and smash that like button and comment part 2. There are plenty of chapters, and if you enjoy it, I'll turn this into a series on the channel. No more stalling, let's jump right in. In this world, magical portals suddenly appeared in the middle of cities about 20 years ago. Some humans awakened supernatural powers, and as a result, adventurer guilds were formed to explore these dungeons. The protagonist was there, registering himself. His name was Yuri, and he was only level 1 with absolutely no abilities. The receptionist even asked the poor guy if he was truly serious about becoming an adventurer. With no real alternatives, he told her to go ahead and complete the registration. At that exact moment, another girl was also signing up. Full of excitement, the redhead named Sophia approached him and said she was happy to work with him. Yuri never expected to meet someone as reckless as himself, someone with no powers who still chose to become an adventurer. Right then, a more experienced adventurer walked up to them. They had just registered and were immediately assigned to a mission alongside this man. The receptionist explained that this guy was named Fukumoto. She also mentioned that adventurers are ranked from F all the way up to S, which is the highest tier. This man was intermediate level, ranked E. Because of that, the girl got really excited, thinking they'd be safe with him around. She even asked Yuri if he had any abilities and why he decided to become an adventurer. Feeling a bit embarrassed, our protagonist admitted he had no powers at all, and only became an adventurer because he desperately needed money. And not just a little bit of money. The truth is, defeating monsters in dungeons brings in a lot of cash due to item drops and magical stones. These stones are extremely valuable, starting at a price of 10,000. The redhead assumed he just wanted to get rich, but Yuri had a much deeper reason behind it. Later on, he returns home and is greeted by his sister. They were orphans, and his younger sister was 15 years old. In reality, Yuri and Katara's parents had disappeared, and ever since then he's been the one covering all their expenses. Yeah, they went out for cigarettes and never came back. Classic. They were poor, but they still managed to live happily together. One day, he came home and found the house completely dark. Yuri was startled when he saw his little sister Katara collapsed on the floor. After rushing to the hospital, the doctor explained that Katara had awakened an ability, but it caused something called incompatible ability syndrome. It was an extremely rare disease, and this was the first recorded case in Japan. In the United States, they had already begun testing a treatment for this condition, and the doctor revealed that it would cost around 500 million. At that point, he completely lost hope, since gathering that kind of money was nearly impossible. Sometime later, he meets Sophia again. That girl was full of energy, completely hyped for the mission. She even looked strong at first glance, but Yuri remained gloomy, worried about his little sister. They headed to the guild location where the portals were opened. When they arrived, they noticed the portal was already active. Other adventurers mentioned that 2 members were still missing to complete the group, and they immediately started looking down on Sophia and Yuri just because they were rank F. I mean, they were rank E, 1 tier higher, and already acting like elites. The protagonist noticed that Sophia was feeling down. It was common for slightly more experienced adventurers to belittle newcomers. After offering a handshake, the man introduced himself by saying it was a pleasure to meet such incompetent rookies. Yeah, he wasn't even trying to hide the disrespect. Since Sophia wanted to make a good impression, she forced a smile and greeted him politely. But Yuri didn't bother trying to please that jerk at all. With that, they stepped into the portal, and the leader said he would explain how the mission worked along the way. Sophia suddenly ran after them, asking them to wait. Yuri would have preferred they explain how dungeons worked before going inside, since it was dangerous. Even so, he still walked toward the portal. He couldn't stop thinking about the insults that guy had thrown at them. As soon as he arrived there, he saw a system window, something he had never seen before. It displayed his stats, including health points, attack, defense, and more. At the guild, his status showed that he had no abilities, but now the window revealed he possessed a hidden skill. This ability was called Forbidden Restriction. People without any abilities couldn't even see that part of the status window. But our protagonist could clearly see that he had this ability, one that allowed him to use magic from a previous life. He had no idea what that meant, since he didn't remember any past life at all. So he started to suspect that he might be a reincarnated individual. At that moment, fragments of memories began flooding his mind, and he saw himself fighting legendary monsters. He had been an archmage, alone, yet overwhelmingly powerful. In that life, he had never experienced happiness, and he didn't even know why he had been reborn thousands of years later. Everything he achieved back then didn't compare to the happiness he now felt because of his little sister Katara. That's exactly why he was taking on these risky jobs to gather 500 million. He was determined to push himself to the limit. Now that he had uncovered his past, he would become a powerful adventurer. Clenching his fists, he swore he would do whatever it took to pay for his sister's treatment. And with that resolve, he stepped through the portal. Yuri had just awakened his ability and partially regained memories of his past. He still didn't remember everything yet, guys, but at least fragments of his previous life had returned. Hundreds of years ago, inside a dungeon, adventurers were already engaged in battle against monsters. These adventurers were of intermediate level and even had a mage in their party. The leader bragged, telling the rookies to watch how a rank C adventurer fights. Sophia became excited, saying they were truly amazing. At that moment, she turned to Yuri and asked if something was wrong, since he looked a bit down. Our protagonist replied that everything was fine. He knew these adventurers wouldn't teach them anything, but it was still better than having companions who would threaten them. Sophia felt emotional, as it was her first time inside a dungeon, and she even commented that it seemed really fun. Yeah, she's about to find out the hard way. She asked if Yuri was enjoying it too, and he pretended that he was. The guy mentioned that she should stay safe, since they still lack combat experience. With an adorable smile, Sophia said she would stay by his side so they could protect each other. At that moment, one of the adventurers engaged a spirit-type monster. The creature suddenly lunged towards Sophia, and the poor girl froze in fear. However, nothing happened. Leaving her confused, a stone pillar had collapsed onto the monster. The leader asked if she was okay, and Sophia said she had just been lucky, since the pillar fell at the perfect moment. Yuri helped her back to her feet, and by now we already know he was the one who cut that pillar to save her. After a few hours, they finally reached the dungeon boss. The door slowly opened, and the three experienced adventurers became tense. Meanwhile, the girl in the back was excited for the boss fight, and they all stepped inside. At that moment, a voice echoed, saying the first condition had been fulfilled, which was reaching the boss chamber without taking damage. They looked up, trying to figure out where the voice was coming from. The mysterious voice continued, stating that the second condition, bringing along 2 rookies, had also been met. And the third condition was to bring someone who had not yet awakened an ability. Just like that, all 3 conditions had been satisfied. Because of this, a massive monster suddenly appeared. Since they had completed all the requirements, a special-level minotaur emerged in the room. The creature let out a roar while gripping a massive blade. The entrance they came through was now sealed, leaving them with no way to escape. Yuri immediately realized their only exit had been cut off. Sophia began to panic, asking if those 3 veterans could really defeat the minotaur. But Yuri told her they couldn't rely on those 3. At that moment, that same jerk who had mocked them was struck by the monster, and just like that, he was sent flying. The leader tried to attack, but Yuri already knew it wouldn't work. The minotaur easily blocked the strike with its weapon. None of their attacks were effective, and the minotaur prepared to strike again. The leader realized he couldn't avenge his companion, who had just taken a critical hit, and then he was struck directly as well. Yuri dashed toward the monster, and gripping his sword, he blocked the attack, shocking even the party leader. The so-called useless rookie was now matching strength against a special-class monster. The creature kept pressing him, and Yuri shouted to the leader that he needed his help, since he knew how to defeat it. He possessed an extremely powerful hidden ability called Forbidden Restriction. He even believed there was a reason this power had been sealed. It was true that Yuri could use magic without consuming mana, but every spell he had learned in his previous life was locked away. If he could completely break free from that restriction, he might even surpass his former self. Through the smoke, he declared that he had a strategy to bring down the Minotaur. Because of that, Fukumoto needed to follow his instructions exactly. The veteran questioned whether the boy wasn't supposed to be a useless rookie and demanded to know why Yuri had hidden his true strength. Our protagonist said there was no time to explain and that defeating the monster came first. The man stood up, saying he would stall for time, since that was exactly what Yuri needed, every second he could buy. The creature raised its weapon to strike, but at that moment, a blast of fire magic hit it straight in the face. They turned around, and the mage angrily asked how that monster dared to kill Yamada. But the Minotaur was incredibly powerful and immediately stomped the ground, sending everyone flying. Yuri said he needed 3 minutes. In his past life, he had already fought this Minotaur, so he knew its weakness. The party leader replied that 3 minutes was a long time, but he would try. This Minotaur was on a completely different level compared to any other monster in that dungeon. Yuri approached Sophia, which startled her. She asked if he was alright. Deep down, he knew there was only one way to defeat that creature, and for that he told her he needed her help. The girl was shocked, saying she couldn't help at all because she was too weak. However, he immediately disagreed. Yuri placed a hand on her shoulder, telling her she was essential, and even asked if it wasn't her dream to become a powerful adventurer. Shyly, she admitted that it was, but she didn't have any magic. Still, Yuri insisted that she was indeed powerful. He repeated it so many times that she slowly began to believe it. Motivated, she said she would give it her all. She then asked what exactly she needed to do. Our protagonist simply stood up, saying there was no time for explanations, and moved closer to her. His expression turned serious, and as he infused his hand with mana, he asked her not to get mad at him. At that moment, Yuri placed his hands on her back. The girl immediately turned bright red, completely flustered since this was very unexpected. Meanwhile, the 2 adventurers were struggling to survive. The Minotaur was vulnerable to magic but extremely resistant to physical attacks. However, that chubby mage didn't have enough mana to cast powerful spells capable of damaging it. Soon, they found themselves face to face with the monster. Yuri was still carrying out his plan alongside Sophia. He was still bound by the forbidden restriction, so the only thing he could do was activate the girl's magic. That's why he was channeling his own mana into her body. It felt strange for both of them. The girl felt extremely embarrassed, but she stayed still. At that moment, she grabbed her cloak and told him to hurry up and stop already. but then she noticed her body was now humming with magical energy. Sophia asked what he had done to her, and as she turned around she questioned whether she could now use magic. He had opened the mana pathways within her body. The girl was confused, saying she didn't have any abilities, so she shouldn't be able to use magic. "Get up and follow me, girl. That way you'll see just how talented you are with magic." Since he couldn't cast spells himself, he had to rely on her. Hearing that made her feel unsure. Nearby, the Minotaur continued rampaging. It was destroying everything around it. It was incredibly tough, and the adventurers couldn't handle it. The leader took a severe hit. The mage said he would avenge his two companions, but right after that he was struck again. They were completely outmatched by the monster. So Fukumoto asked if the rookie had finished his plan. Standing side by side with the redhead, Yuri told her to use her magic. Just looking at that monster made her tremble in fear, so he told her to calm down. Now she needed to take a deep breath and focus, and that's exactly what she did. Then, her energy began to glow intensely around her body. Even Yuri was surprised, since despite having no experience, she was doing incredibly well. Meanwhile, the leader was still facing the monster head-on. Yuri asked if she was focused, and she said yes. Now, she needed to extend her hands. He told her to create a crimson lotus fireball. Sophia covered her face, thinking it wouldn't work, but Yuri told her to trust him. As she stretched out her hands, a flame began to form. Even she couldn't believe what was happening. Then suddenly, a massive fire spell appeared in front of her. Both of their eyes reflected the overwhelming power. And just like that, she unleashed a crimson lotus blast. The attack was so powerful that the Minotaur couldn't even react. And just like that, the monster got turned into barbecue. Yeah, instant grill mode activated. The girl just stood there, staring at the massive charred remains. Her cheeks flushed. Sophia said it was truly incredible. Yuri told her it was all thanks to her power. Blushing even more, she thanked Yuri. The monster collapsed to the ground, kicking up dust. When the girl checked her status window, she saw that she had defeated a rank B Minotaur. Then, a hidden door in the final boss room opened, revealing a magical stone inside. The mission had been completed. Later, they returned to the adventurers' headquarters and called for emergency assistance. The medics quickly arrived to treat the injured adventurers. They were badly hurt, but they would survive. When he approached that stone, he realized it contained a very strong energy. If he destroyed that core stone, the dungeon would collapse. Sometimes the guild requested the core to be destroyed, and other times they wanted it left intact. After returning to the guild, they reported everything to the supervisor. After handing over their guild cards, they registered each monster they had defeated. They did this to determine the most appropriate reward, as one of the guild staff explained. He stood up to return their cards, but the employee said he had a few questions about the Minotaur they defeated. The boy took his card. Meanwhile, the staff member wanted to know how they managed to defeat a dungeon boss that was far stronger than them. Yuri grew tense, wondering if Sophia would keep her promise. A few hours earlier inside the dungeon, he had asked Sophia to keep it a secret that he was the one who awakened her power. The girl asked, "Why are you saying that about her?" Yuri casually replied that it would just turn into a hassle. He explained that he would have to go into detail about the kind of power he possessed, and even mentioned it was better to keep his abilities hidden since all he really wanted was to earn money. She said she would support him, letting out a small laugh as she expressed her gratitude. Blushing deeply, the girl then asked him to take her in as his disciple. He definitely didn't see that coming and ended up refusing to help her. That response completely crushed her. Still, she tried to play it off with a light chuckle, saying everything was fine. He refused her mainly because of how she reacted. When he told her she was strong, the girl became shy and a bit suspicious. In simple terms, Sophia wasn't really suited to be an adventurer. And yeah, the reason was pretty obvious. She was just too kind. Back in the present, they informed the guild staff that Sophia was the one who delivered the final blow. They claimed they had no abilities and only managed to defeat the monster because the Minotaur was already weakened. The employee asked if that was truly what happened. They had waited for Fukumoto's team to wear the Minotaur down before stepping in to finish it off. The girl explained that she had only been watching the fight and struck at the very end when the Minotaur was about to fall. They were clearly lying, just to make sure no one discovered that the protagonist had awakened to power. The staff member believed their story, since the record showed she landed the final hit, and even thanked both of them for their bravery in entering the dungeon and facing such a powerful monster. With that, he handed over their reward. The protagonist took the check, feeling grateful and assuming it would be around 20,000. But when he opened the envelope, he saw it was 250,000. Meanwhile, the girl looked shocked, saying she didn't deserve to receive that much. That's because her reward totaled 3 million. Clearly embarrassed, she said it wasn't fair. But the guild employee explained that whoever lands the final hit on the boss receives 75% of the total reward, while the remaining 25% is split among the others. She felt really guilty, knowing she only managed to use that power thanks to the protagonist. But she still expressed her thanks. Guess camping for the last hit really pays off, our hero thought. The staff member then added that this was because they weren't part of any clan. If they belonged to a clan and entered the dungeon together, the total reward would be evenly distributed. He even mentioned that he hoped to see both of them taking on more missions from now on. Yuri said he was incompetent due to his weakness but promised he would give it his all. Later, as he was heading home, he realized just how much money he had earned, and that 250,000 was more than he made in an entire month of side jobs. Meanwhile, Sophia had received 3 million. A few hours earlier, she had approached him saying that amount was unfair, since she had barely done anything. After all, he was the one who gave her that power. She even offered to give him the entire amount, but Yuri insisted she deserved it, explaining that the Crimson Lotus Fireball was a power that already existed within her. He even joked that if she didn't want the money, he'd just burn the check. Low-key, he actually liked her. He only said she lacked talent as an adventurer to keep her safe. When he got home, he thought about the number he had given her, realizing they had exchanged contact information. Even so, he still felt down, knowing he still needed a huge amount of money to save his little sister. As he sat on the couch, he couldn't believe he had earned 250,000 just from defeating a single Minotaur. Being an adventurer was seriously profitable. He grabbed his phone and saw a photo Katara had sent, saying she was eating pudding. She sounded so happy in her messages, saying she managed to stand up and even ate 3 whole puddings. He started crying, realizing her condition had been so bad that simply getting out of bed felt like a huge victory to her. He needed to gather money as fast as possible to save her. If he took too long, it might already be too late. Filled with determination and releasing his mana, he told himself he would do everything he could to save his little sister. He opened his status window and began checking his skill points. He had reached level 10 and unlocked a new ability called Summoning the Manager Fairy. So he activated it, and a burst of smoke suddenly filled the area. From within it, his manager fairy appeared. He wondered what kind of fairy this was, and at that moment, she made a noise before opening her eyes to look at him. The tiny fairy suddenly caused an explosive reaction, throwing him into complete chaos. She even got angry, demanding to know what he had been doing for the past 20 years without training to become stronger. Our protagonist, completely confused, said he didn't understand anything and asked her to wait before scolding him. He then asked, "Who exactly are you?" She responded that she was the fairy responsible for managing the Forbidden Restriction skill, and that she had only one purpose. Curious, he asked what that purpose was. Spreading her wings, she declared that her role was to make him stronger and help him regain all the power he once had in his previous life. That was her sole mission, leaving him completely shocked. She even said she was disappointed that he had been reborn into this body, and spent 20 years without training, remaining weak. She started calling him an idiot, and kept scolding him for a while. Yuri then asked if he had created her in his past life, since he couldn't remember anything. At that moment, she realized his memories hadn't fully returned. He admitted that was true, saying he only remembered a few monsters he had defeated in the past. When he tried to recall the fairy, he said he truly couldn't remember her. The girl stared at Yuri and asked if he could at least use any spells. He said no, adding that he couldn't even remember the moment of his own death. She turned completely serious, almost as if there were things she didn't want to disclose. It felt like he had been setting something up back in his previous life, and the fact that he was reborn into this body many years later made it seem like it had all been part of his own plan. The fairy even told him there was no need to dwell on the frustration of not remembering anything. At that moment, he realized she was hiding the truth, probably because he was meant to uncover it on his own. He glanced at her and thought she looked pretty suspicious, especially since she clearly wasn't willing to explain anything. So he asked the fairy what exactly she planned to do to make him stronger. She replied that by upgrading the restriction, he would rapidly gain much more power. Naturally, he questioned what she meant by upgrading, and she explained that it worked very differently from randomly acquiring abilities. With that, she raised her small hand and began casting a spell. Soon after, she summoned a brand new interface. She explained that this new system was called Additional Item Exchange. The guy immediately realized just how broken that ability sounded. Yeah, this is already looking like pay to win. In simple terms, he could retrieve any item he had obtained in the past. However, those items were limited by storage capacity. He asked if that included his item boxes, and she confirmed that it did, meaning he could reclaim all the legendary weapons he once possessed. That left Yuri completely stunned, unable to believe how powerful this ability could be. But then the girl mentioned there was a cost involved. It functioned like a kind of trade condition. He instantly assumed there had to be a major downside. She even warned that she wouldn't let him use it if he kept complaining like that. He quickly apologized, saying he wouldn't complain anymore. At that point, he interacted with the system and saw all the items available to him. They were incredibly powerful, legendary tier weapons. He decided to check whether a specific item he already knew about was there. And sure enough, he found the omnipotent elixir, capable of instantly curing any illness in existence. The catch was that to exchange for these items, he had to spend money. That was the condition, and that particular item cost exactly 500 million. At least now, instead of paying for some uncertain treatment overseas, he could invest in a magical item that would definitely cure his sister. The fairy asked if he felt discouraged because of the requirements. He said no, because now he was even more certain he could save his little sister. During the fight against the Minotaur, he had already realized just how overpowered his ability was, though it came with certain restrictions. The fairy confirmed that while he needed money to obtain those items, he would also receive an experience bonus. He asked how that worked. At that moment, he looked a bit clueless. Come on, everyone knows what an experience boost is, but she explained that when he fought stronger monsters, he would gain double the experience. Basically, he had a video game-like system built into his power, allowing him to level up, and he was the only one who had it. Other people didn't have levels like that. They only had rankings. The fairy went on to say that his forbidden restriction was an incredibly powerful ability, but it still wasn't fully unlocked. At that moment, he asked for the fairy's name, and she seemed slightly annoyed. She said he should already remember it, since he was the one who created her. Laughing awkwardly, Yuri admitted he couldn't remember anything, apologized, and said he would give her a new name. so he ended up naming the little fairy Spheri. She made a slightly displeased expression. He asked if she didn't like the name, and after letting out a small laugh, she said she would accept it, since it was actually the same name he had given her in the past. However, for Spheri to work for him, he would need to provide hot baths every day, desserts, and always keep ice cream stocked in the fridge. He pointed out that all of that would cost a lot of money, but she reminded him that the forbidden restriction was an ability that would bring him huge profits. He then asked if that was the extra condition she had mentioned, and she confirmed it was. She disappeared right after, telling him to have everything ready by the next day. He commented that the little fairy had shown up like a storm and left just as fast. Looking at his status window, he realized he was still very weak. He was at level 10 and still ranked F. While checking the mission board, he noticed there was a recruitment notice for a raid. To reach a higher level beyond his current F rank, he needed to build friendly relationships with other adventurers. By participating in tougher missions, he would gradually climb the ranks. The next day, he headed out for his next mission. He joined an expedition team preparing to enter a D-rank dungeon. When he arrived, a man named Takai asked if he was Yuri, the one who signed up for the mission. Our protagonist confirmed that it was him. A blonde girl named Isa was watching the conversation, while two other adventurers didn't seem too pleased with his presence. A guy with glasses mentioned they needed one more person to complete the party. Meanwhile, the others mocked him, saying an F rank like him wouldn't get any share of the loot, joking that since he wouldn't contribute, he wouldn't earn anything either. Savage, but not entirely wrong. With a calm smile, Yuri said he would make up for his lack of ability. From the back, someone told him not to worry about the teasing, mentioning that there was a C-rank member in the group who was very strong. Those who had mocked him were only D-rank, meaning they were weaker. He then looked at the blonde girl and realized she was probably the C-rank the man was referring to. They soon prepared to pass through the portal. However, the protagonist felt uneasy about the man standing next to him, since his gaze seemed a bit sinister. Of course, Yuri immediately grew suspicious. Yeah, that guy is definitely not giving trustworthy teammate vibes. Soon after they entered the D-rank dungeon, they immediately began taking down monsters. Isa performed exceptionally well, firing off her arrows with precision. She struck a giant goblin, while another warrior activated his sword ability. They even told Yuri to stay behind them to avoid putting himself in danger. Their teamwork seemed well coordinated. Yuri kept wondering when the right moment would be for him to jump into the fight and help. Isa was fully focused on the monster in front of her, and didn't notice that a hobgoblin was sneaking up from behind. He quickly realized the goblin was about to spit out a stream of fire. Because of that, he rushed forward to shield her. The girl shouted that it was dangerous, but he still managed to block the creature's attack. With her cheeks flushed, she asked what he thought he was doing, and in the next instant, the monster knocked him backward, but he immediately tried to push forward again, this time using an electric ability. The night before, he had spent time studying his skills. He was still at level 10, but he had already accumulated 9 points. Each time he leveled up, he could assign those extra points however he wanted. He even chose to concentrate everything into a single ability. At first, he considered investing in magic to launch fireballs. Or maybe it would be better to strengthen his close-range attack power. It was true that his forbidden restriction ability didn't consume mana, but on the flip side, it drained his stamina quickly if he kept using it. So after thinking it through, he decided to push one of his abilities all the way to S rank, and spent several hours that night analyzing his skill tree. When he examined one particular skill, it caught his interest. We're not told exactly which ability he picked, but it's safe to say the guy made a solid choice. Before confirming his changes, he realized he could become incredibly strong if he kept training. Back in the present, we see that he upgraded his close combat fighting style. The others kept saying he was just a rookie with no abilities and shouldn't interfere in battles. Even so, he said it was fine and used a sonic impact, sending the hobgoblin flying. Since he defeated a monster stronger than himself, he earned double experience. The creature collapsed lifeless on the ground, and everyone stood there in shock, not knowing how to react. Isa herself asked how he had the power to pull that off, and that shady-looking guy nearby seemed very interested. Yuri ended up gaining 2 levels just from defeating that monster. The girl slowly walked over to him, and after getting his attention, she asked what kind of ability he had. After all, it was normal for newcomers to tell the group whether they had abilities and what they were. Feeling a bit embarrassed, he explained that he hadn't mentioned it because he had only acquired it the night before and apologized for not saying anything earlier. She said she had been worried about him and that it would have been awful if he had suffered a fatal injury. Once again, he apologized, trying to act like she hadn't been worried about him. The girl then said that from now on, he would be able to handle things on his own. On top of that, he had saved her life. Because of that, she thanked him, which made him happy. He also thanked her in return, and she responded with a playful wink. Right after that, the others started complaining, saying that now that he had killed a monster, they would have to share the reward with a rookie. The glasses-wearing knight said that wasn't a problem, since having more help was better. Letting out a sigh, one of them muttered that he would have preferred to split the reward among just the 4 of them. Our protagonist chimed in sarcastically, saying he was sorry for helping them. Extending his hand, the red-haired man apologized for teasing the rookie earlier and said he would be counting on him from now on. He accepted the apology, and they shook hands, agreeing to work together to clear the dungeon. Soon after, they encountered a giant monster that served as the dungeon boss. After defeating it, Yuri managed to reach level 17. Honestly, the dungeon had started to feel a bit too easy. The glasses-wearing knight even said it was only easy because of Yuri's help, even though he was a newcomer. Our hero laughed it off, saying that wasn't true since he barely contributed to defeating the monsters. Since they had cleared the dungeon, the red-haired man suggested they head back to the guild. However, he was suddenly struck from behind. A crimson dagger pierced straight through his chest, leaving the others completely stunned. That same guy who had been giving off bad vibes earlier was the one who attacked him, and when he pulled the blade out, the red-haired man collapsed to the ground. That man was named Asura, and the knight demanded to know what he was doing, but as he turned around, he calmly said he was eliminating other adventurers. The knight with glasses was furious, since the red-haired man had been his best friend, so he immediately charged at the killer. Ozawa casually told his former teammate not to make such a scary face. The knight, still enraged, declared that he would avenge his best friend. At that moment, Ozawa leaped back. The knight told the others behind him not to interfere, saying he wanted to avenge his friend himself by taking this guy down. Iza pointed out that it would be much easier if they all fought together, but Yuri told her not to rush in. He said they should let the knight settle things and avenge his friend. He understood it was illogical to fight alone and risk his life, but it was something that man wanted to do. Iza called it foolish, but agreed to respect his decision. The knight thanked them for giving him the chance to avenge his friend and began releasing all of his power. They were still inside the dungeon. The knight seemed quite strong, but Yuri couldn't be certain, however, that assassin's weapon felt unusual. It seemed like the weapon itself was growing stronger. Then he remembered it. It was a dagger called the Crimson Blade, a weapon that increased in power every time its wielder killed someone. Ozawa started laughing, saying none of the three of them stood a chance against him. Yeah, bro really thinks he's the final boss already. Enraged, the knight rushed toward him. Ozawa blocked the attack with his dagger, and the two began exchanging rapid blows. The knight found it strange, since he had no idea Ozawa was this strong, and even wondered if he had been hiding his true ability the whole time, noting that he didn't seem like a mere C rank. In that instant, Ozawa suddenly appeared behind the knight, and the killer mocked him, saying he was about to add another victim to his count. In that moment, he manages to strike the knight's shoulder. The guy with glasses immediately feels a sharp pain shooting through his arm. Ozawa mocks him, asking if he was not the same one bragging about taking him down. At that instant, the knight pulls out a potion and stares at the liquid inside it. That sight brings back a memory of the day he received it as a birthday gift. It had been his best friend who gave it to him. Even though it was expensive, it was his way of repaying everything the knight had done for him. Back then, they promised they would always remain comrades on the battlefield. Returning to the present, the knight decides to drink the potion. Ozawa questions whether this is really the time to worry about staying alive, considering he is about to die. Then suddenly, the potion slips from his hand and hits the ground, triggering a massive explosion. Ozawa gets blasted backward by the impact. That potion did not just heal, it also granted a temporary surge of power. Now defeating the knight would not be so easy anymore. The knight charges forward, executing a silent strike. However, Ozawa proves to be incredibly fast as well. He moves like a demon unleashed. With swift motions, he swings his blades relentlessly, and the knight fails to block every attack. At one point, his eye even gets slashed. That crimson blade was insanely powerful. The assassin keeps boasting, and just like that, the knight's glasses shatter into pieces. Iza refuses to stand by and watch, preparing her rapid shot. Her arrow flies straight toward Ozawa, and just as it is about to hit, he notices it. Yeah, bro's reflexes are not normal. In an instant, he changes direction and rushes toward the blonde girl. She is left wondering how he dodged and closed the distance so quickly. Grabbing her, he tells her to stay out of this, and since she interfered, he will take her down. He prepares to deliver the finishing blow, but Yuri steps in, extending his blade and stopping the attack cold. At this point, she is falling even harder for him, no question. Man is unintentionally building a harem mid-battle. Ozawa demands to know how a rookie dares to interfere in his fight. Right then, the protagonist releases his mana and asks if he wants to be crushed. The knight agrees, telling Yuri to defeat Ozawa in his place. After grinding for so long, the protagonist declares that he will take over from here. The assassin gets irritated, claiming that this rookie is way too full of himself. At that moment, Yuri simply raises his hand and unleashes sonic impact on the bastard, stating he will not be intimidated by someone so weak. Ozawa is caught off guard, not expecting the rookie to have such a move hidden. Meanwhile, Yuri knows that the Crimson Dagger is extremely dangerous, so this is no time to hold back. Ozawa insists he will not lose to a nobody and charges at Yuri at full speed. The protagonist understands he cannot afford any mistakes, so he blocks the Crimson Dagger with his sword. Ozawa even jokes that the rookie has sharp perception, but that alone is not enough. You talk big, but you cannot even use that dagger properly. That clearly hits a nerve. How dare someone claim he cannot handle his own weapon? He then reveals that the Crimson Dagger truly grows stronger every time he kills someone. He leaps backward, creating distance between himself and Yuri. Iza warns Yuri to be careful, pointing out how fast their enemy is. Ozawa starts circling him, declaring he will slice him into pieces. Yuri, however, dismisses his speed as nothing impressive. He pinpoints the exact spot where Ozawa is moving and stops him with his blade. Isa cannot understand how such a low-level rookie is this strong. Even Ozawa is baffled that an F rank is keeping up with him. Just sensing Yuri's aura fills him with overwhelming fear. It feels like he is facing someone with monstrous levels of mana. Yuri steps closer, stating that Ozawa is nothing more than a background character, and prepares to take his head. Aiza watches the fight with tension written all over her face. Suddenly, Ozawa jumps back and starts laughing. Next, he rushes toward the blonde again and tells Isa to behave like a good girl. But Yuri had already predicted that move and reacts faster, slashing the assassin across the back. Ozawa collapses to the ground, completely defeated. He struggles to stand, insisting that it is not over yet. But then he notices something is wrong. He can no longer use his blade. Confused, he asks Yuri what he did to him. The protagonist had struck Ozawa's mana channel directly. Because of that, he can no longer use mana to enhance his strength or speed. In simple terms, from now on, he cannot use any magic or skills. Without mana, that Crimson Blade is basically worthless now. He never imagined that a rookie like Yuri would defeat him. He starts laughing like a madman, saying he will share some information with Yuri. Ozawa offers the blade to Yuri as a bonus for defeating him and even suggests that Yuri should kill him with it to make the weapon stronger. Isa calls him insane, while the guy keeps rambling like a lunatic, urging Yuri to kill him. According to him, Yuri will understand how satisfying it is to eliminate others. Oh, so that is why you have been killing people inside the dungeons? He admits it without hesitation, saying that killing others is what made him stronger. Yuri says he feels sorry for Ozawa, which catches him off guard. He pities him because Ozawa is a failure. He could not grow stronger in an honest way. That is why he resorted to killing others. In other words, Ozawa was desperate for power, and Yuri understood that desperation can drive people to act irrationally. Ozawa gets angry, saying Yuri has no right to judge him like that. And when he asks to be killed, Yuri refuses, stating that he will not end his life. Furious, Ozawa demands to know the reason behind all of this. Yuri calmly responds that this bastard must answer for every sin he has committed and spend eternity locked away. To him, simply dying would not be a fitting punishment. Suddenly, Ozawa spits out a small sphere, which bursts and turns into a smoke bomb. Taking advantage of the confusion, he grabs his own dagger, declaring he will put an end to all this nonsense. He then tries to stab himself, and Isa lets out a shocked scream. But the protagonist reacts instantly, striking the back of his neck and knocking him unconscious. I told you death is not enough for you. With that, the man collapses, and they tie him up. Isa approaches Yuri and tells him that the two of them are nothing alike, just as he had claimed earlier. She adds that it makes no sense for him to pity Ozawa, since Yuri is clearly kind-hearted and refused to commit something evil. The protagonist asks if the blonde was worried about him, and blushing, she admits that she was, since he had saved her multiple times. Even though he looks intimidating, he is actually gentle and kind. He pats her on the head and apologizes for seeming scary. Flustered, she thanks him for saving her. Later on, they call the authorities to take Ozawa into custody. The knight, overcome with emotion, thanks Yuri for saving his life. On top of that, Suzuki, his red-haired friend, managed to survive. However, he will be left with some lasting injuries. Fortunately, the fight did not drag on, and they were able to call emergency services quickly enough to save him. He might never return to dungeon exploration as an adventurer, but at least he will stay alive. The protagonist walks over to a vending machine and grabs a canned drink. He apologizes, saying that only coffee was left since the soda was sold out. She replies that she does drink coffee and tells him not to treat her like a child. After taking a sip, she finds the taste awful, while he quietly laughs to himself, knowing younger people usually hate coffee. Yeah, first sip betrayal hits hard. Then he mentions that he is curious about what she wanted to ask him. She says she wants to know the secret behind his strength. He claims there is no secret and asks why someone so young is working as an adventurer. She taps the coffee can and argues that she is not that young, since she is already in high school. Oh, so you are younger than my sister Katara, she asks. Who is Katara? He explains that she is his little sister, and the blonde finds that interesting, saying he really gives off Big Brother vibes. Wait, what exactly does a Big Brother vibe look like? She says she just thinks he would suit being very protective. With a suspicious expression, Yuri asks whether that is supposed to be a compliment or an insult. She quickly answers that it is obviously a compliment, saying he is caring and protective. A bit embarrassed, he thanks her. Trying to act cute, she asks again if he is not going to reveal his secret. He tells her to stop doing that, but she insists she will not stop at all. She wants him to show his true power and explain how he became so strong. Growing slightly irritated, he says for the 20th time that he is not telling her anything. As he reaches for another can, she apologizes for pushing so much and jokes that no girl would want someone that cold. He turns toward her, telling her to stop insulting him, but then she notices something and asks if she can see his hands. When he holds them out, she spots a small injury. She takes out a bandage and carefully treats the wound. After finishing, she happily says that she has taken care of it. He realizes just how sweet she is. Excited, she says she finally managed to see him smile, even if just a little. He insists that was not a smile, still looking grumpy. She teases him, asking if he is happy being cared for by a high school girl. With a bored expression, he says yes and thanks her. Then she asks for his phone number. Yeah, she is definitely into him. He agrees to give it and tells her she can contact him anytime. Giggling, she says she will invite him to raid another dungeon, and he replies that he will only help if he has time. That answer leaves her pouting, and he lets out another laugh. She complains, slightly annoyed, asking if he did not just say she could call him whenever she wanted. Later, they say their goodbyes, and Issa mentions she would love to meet his younger sister. He waves as he leaves, thinking that Katara would be really happy to meet Issa. After taking a shower at home, he notices a message on his phone. It is Katara, sending a photo and saying the nurse got mad because she spent almost the entire day playing video games. He promises himself that he will cure her as soon as possible. He sends a message back saying he met a high school girl who could become a great friend for her. At that moment, the fairy Sphere suddenly appears. She is furious, complaining that he did not prepare a warm bath for her, did not buy snacks, and did not even stock the fridge with ice cream. He only had 3 tasks for the day, and he failed every single one. He immediately starts apologizing, and when she threatens to take away his powers, he desperately begs for forgiveness. Slightly irritated, she says she will forgive him this time only, and calls him a very troublesome guy. Still, that generous little fairy actually had some good news for him. She had added a hidden dungeon key to the item exchange. He immediately gets confused. What does she mean, a hidden dungeon key? When he taps on his status window, he realizes that the item is indeed available for purchase. Curious, he asks what exactly it means. She explains that solo dungeons are extremely difficult to clear and even tells him, just buy the item already so I can finish explaining. He clicks on the menu, and several dungeon options appear, ranging from rank D all the way to rank S. The recommended one is a rank C dungeon. She explains that by buying the key, he will be able to enter that dungeon and face it alone. It would be incredibly hard to defeat the monsters, but the experience gain would be huge. Clearly excited, Yahello encourages him to use this opportunity to level up much faster. He thinks for a moment and decides to aim straight for a higher challenge. Yahello starts teasing him, saying he will not be able to handle it and should try an easier dungeon instead. After all, these solo dungeons grant much more experience, but they are also far more dangerous since he has to fight alone. He pauses, weighing the situation. High risk, high reward. Classic gamer dilemma. Yahello keeps provoking him, asking if he is getting cold feet. So he declares that he will not hold back and will go for a rank B dungeon instead. She gets a bit shocked, saying he is being way too greedy, but he insists that he needs to buy that key. The key itself is very expensive. If he only chooses a rank C dungeon, the profit would not be that great. She continues pushing him, saying he will only grow stronger if he manages to defeat monsters in solo dungeons. After she keeps getting on his nerves, he finally buys the key, allowing him to enter a solo dungeon. A door suddenly appears right inside his room, and Yahello asks if he is really going to enter it already, sounding slightly concerned. He says yes, since he does not want to waste a single moment. Joking around, she says he is getting pretty confident. With determination, Yuri says he needs to grow stronger to save his sister. Now that was the archmage she knew. He would only become stronger thanks to her. A bit worried, she asks him to promise that he will come back safely, and he laughs, saying he will. Alright, now that you promised, you can go. She also tells him to bring back some ice cream when he finishes. Laughing, he agrees, then grabs the handle and steps through the portal. Instantly, he is transported into the rank B dungeon. Meanwhile, his little sister was not doing well at all. She was coughing up blood and felt extremely weak. She tries to stand up to wash her hands, but due to her condition, she collapses onto the floor. The nurses rush into the room and find Katara lying there surrounded by blood. They immediately call for a doctor as fast as possible. If her illness keeps progressing, she will only have a few days left to live. Even so, the only thing she can think about is her older brother. Meanwhile, Yuri is already inside the dungeon. This forest looks completely different from anything he has seen before. Looking upward, he spots a very unusual fruit. It is called the Lorna fruit. It is an extremely rare type of fruit, and there is not just one, there are many of them. The Lorna fruit is commonly used in alchemy. He snaps his fingers, planning to gather all of them since they would grant a lot of experience. Using sonic impact, he knocks all the fruits down to the ground. Right after that, he attempts to fly and catch some birds. While exploring the area, he notices a small creature moving nearby. With a grin, he says today must be his lucky day. He immediately starts chasing after it. That creature is known as a turbo rat. At that moment, Yahello suddenly appears there and asks him about Atenia. Wait a second, fairy, how did you show up inside this dungeon? She explains that when it comes to hidden dungeons, she can appear freely. This is possible because she is the manager of the forbidden restriction system he created. He thanks her but says she could have at least warned him beforehand. She continues talking about Atenia, a carnivorous plant that lives in this forest. These plants attempt to devour any living being, including the turbo rat. He decides to follow the turbo rat, assuming it is heading straight into the plant's trap. As he chases it, a form of dark magic begins pursuing them. He realizes that monsters are hunting both him and the turbo rat. Yahello points ahead, saying that is where Atenia lives, and he says he is heading there. The turbo rat runs out of energy and can no longer escape using its bursts, so Yuri reaches out, planning to catch it. At that moment, he falls straight into Atenia's trap. The fairy shouts for him to be careful, and the monster ends up devouring everything. He gets trapped inside along with the fairy, but he levels up. That is because he uses explosive magic to destroy the monster from within. Without much trouble, he escapes from inside it. He has already reached level 32, and the little fairy gets excited, saying her master is truly strong. However, it seems he will not get a moment of peace, as the ground is filled with monsters. The fairy suggests retreating to rethink their strategy, but Yuri says that is unnecessary. Meanwhile, a monster is approaching from behind him. With a confident look, Yuri declares that he will wipe out every creature in this dungeon and prepares to unleash Dynamic Explosion. That strike was insanely powerful, and right after that he cast the Crimson Lotus Fireball, the very same spell he once had Sophia use. Within just a few minutes, he wiped out every monster and gained 20 additional levels. The fairy pouts, saying he is way stronger than she initially thought, and he casually states that those monsters were nothing to him. The girl is left completely stunned. Then she lets out a sigh, admitting she expected nothing less from her master. He chuckles, thinking to himself that Ysfir is honestly way too noisy. He keeps an eye on his level through the status window. She even reminds him to make sure he collects all the items dropped by the monsters. He uses the interface to gather everything scattered across the ground. Among the loot, there were even some rare items. He admits there is really nothing to complain about. This place is basically a jackpot. The fairy starts advising him on which items he should sell first. One of those items was worth $1 million, and he is completely shocked. If he actually sold everything, he would soon have enough money to buy that potion capable of curing any illness. Full of excitement, he declares that he will clear this dungeon and immediately move on to the next one. But the fairy stays beside him, warning her master not to get too overconfident. At that moment, it feels like he has triggered another trap. A dark energy begins chasing him, almost like it is trying to capture him. A powerful monster appears right in front of him. Ysfir explains that the creature is a Naga. It was the boss of this hidden dungeon. The recommended level to fight it was 500. Because of that, she tells Yuri to just turn around and leave, since he would be defeated. But our hero decides he wants to fight the monster anyway, leaving Ysfir seriously worried. Since they had already achieved their goal of leveling up, she insists there is no need to fight something that strong. He cracks his arms, getting ready. The protagonist says he needs to grow stronger to save Katura, and even claims that a mere Naga is nothing more than a source of experience. So, he stands face to face with this level 150 boss. He activates an enhancement technique and charges straight at the Naga. The creature laughs and effortlessly blocks his attack. He already knew the Naga's skin was extremely tough, making physical attacks almost useless. At that moment, it unleashes a poisonous breath and creates distance. The venom was so potent it could even corrode stone. And the fairy is just there, completely panicking. Understandable, honestly. With a serious expression, Yuri tells himself he must avoid every single poisonous attack. The Nagas seem to be adapting to his fighting style. The boy admits it had been a long time since he felt this nervous. Opening a portal, he prepares to draw out a weapon. He checks the system window to determine the most effective option, and ends up choosing a cleaver. The fairy realizes he has fully mastered the forbidden restriction system. Now that he was facing the Naga head-on, he needed to land a decisive strike. He moves in to attack and manages to hit it directly. However, the Naga's skin was so durable that it caused no damage at all. He is shocked, because even Yuri did not expect this monster to be that strong. The fairy warns him that the Naga is coming, and when it strikes, he gets thrown far away. His weapon is damaged, and he starts cursing the monster. It seems like none of his weapons are effective against it. In other words, it was all or nothing now. Either he dies, or he kills it. No respawns here. So, he charges straight at the massive creature. The monster tries to devour him, but he shoves his hand into its mouth and uses sonic impact. A massive explosion erupts, and taking advantage of the opening, he casts the Crimson Lotus Fireball. But that magic does not seem to work on Nagas. At that moment, he realizes the creature is simply absorbing the mana from his spells. Since the forbidden restriction system does not require mana for his abilities, he starts unleashing spell after spell, overloading the Naga. The fairy warns that this will not work, since he will run out of stamina first. He keeps firing countless fireballs, even coughing up blood because of the physical strain. It is true that it does not consume mana, but his body begins to break down from the inside. His organs were struggling to handle the stress caused by the constant spell casting. Even so, he continues launching fire magic while the Naga absorbs everything, until it suddenly begins to crumble into dust. His plan actually worked. Not bad at all. Ysfir tells him that if he keeps going a little longer, he will defeat it, and he prepares one final spell. The attack was so powerful that it finally killed the creature. But at the same time, Yuri was completely drained. To finish it, he uses the Great Lotus Blast and obliterates the Naga entirely. One of the dropped items was a sword called the Naga's Poison Blade. It was an incredibly powerful weapon, but he was utterly exhausted and collapsed to the ground. The fairy approaches, saying he did well, and he replies that his entire body is in pain. She laughs and says that serves him right, but now he can relax, because she will teleport him back to the human world. The guy passes out right there, and so, she activates the teleportation spell. However, she ended up messing everything up. She entered the wrong coordinates, so he did not end up returning straight home. The guy was just standing in the middle of the street when someone started approaching, forcing her to disappear. And guess who turned the corner? Yep, it was Sophia, the redhead who clearly had a thing for him. She looked surprised, cheeks slightly flushed, asking what Yuri was doing there. Shortly after, when he regained consciousness, he realized he was somewhere unfamiliar. He looked around and questioned where exactly he was. It turned out to be a girl's room. At that moment, he heard the sound of a drawer opening. Sophia said she felt relieved now that he had finally woken up. He asked her why he was in her room. She explained that she had been walking near his building and found him collapsed by the roadside, so he thanked her for helping him. With a smile, she replied that she would gladly take care of him. However, she wanted to know why he had passed out in the first place. He explained that he tried to clear a rank C dungeon alone, and while escaping in an exhausted state, he ended up getting teleported to that street. She was shocked and asked if he was alright after facing a rank C dungeon solo. He said he was fine, all thanks to her. She also mentioned that she had taken care of his belongings. A bit shy, she asked if he was hungry since she had prepared some porridge. He replied that he was starving and would love to try her cooking. Blushing slightly, she said it was her way of repaying everything he had done for her. He told her to stop worrying about that, saying it would always be his pleasure to save her whenever needed. Yeah, bro really went full romantic mode right there. She then continued preparing the rest of the meal. He smiled, thinking to himself that she was incredibly kind. At that moment, he noticed a piece of her clothing sticking out of the drawer. He told himself he should not be looking over there, but when she returned, she caught him staring at her drawer and immediately ran out, slamming the door shut. Completely flustered, she asked if he had seen her underwear, and he tried to play it off, saying no. However, she clearly knew he had seen it. And yeah, the guy eventually admits he might have taken a tiny peek. Overwhelmed with embarrassment, she covered her face, saying it was too humiliating. He told her not to worry about it. After all, it was her fault for leaving the room messy. Savage, honestly. But none of that really mattered now. The porridge was ready for him to eat. She even said she hoped he would like it. He tried to act tough, but deep down he thought she was adorable. Then he thanked her for the meal, and after tasting it, his cheeks flushed as he admitted it was delicious. According to her, the secret ingredient was a bit of grated ginger. He kept enjoying the food, praising her as a great cook. He even mentioned how well she cooks and asked if it was because she lives away from her parents. That must be why she learned to cook at a young age. With a more serious expression, she revealed that her parents had died about 7 years ago, killed by monsters. In the city where she used to live, a portal had appeared, and from it emerged a massive creature. Her parents were attacked right in front of her. Yeah, the mood dropped instantly. He apologized for bringing up such painful memories, but she told him not to worry too much, since it had been a long time and she no longer dwelled on it. He asked if that was the reason she wanted to become an adventurer. She said yes. She wanted to grow stronger and save as many people as possible, so no one else would go through what she did. She wished to protect others, and she said all of that with unwavering determination. With a small laugh, she added that was why she asked to become his disciple, because she wanted to get stronger. Even though she was not the smartest or most talented, she still held a noble goal of saving others. At that moment, he realized she was not just someone chasing money or driven by weak motivations, as he had previously assumed. He even apologized for what he had told her a few days earlier, when he said she had no talent. She asked him to get up and told him there was no need to apologize. He then said he would like to take back what he said about her lacking talent as an adventurer, and if she wanted, she could become his disciple, since he would like to teach her. The girl became emotional. Poor thing. According to Yuri, an adventurer does not need to be strong or naturally gifted. What truly matters is courage, and she had plenty of that. Since she was brave, he wanted to help her. She became overwhelmed with emotion, and he asked once again if she would like to be his disciple. With tears in her eyes, she bowed and said she would love to learn from him. Yuri would turn her into a first-class mage. She agreed and said she was looking forward to working with him. Later on, he returned to his house. He checked all the items he had obtained from that dungeon. He had also acquired the ogre boss's necklace. He sold most of the items and kept some for future use. On top of that, the weapon he used against the Naga had broken. Because of that, he would start using the new blade he obtained from that battle. Holding an ice cream, the fairy asked how his resource distribution was going, and he showed her that he had already reached level 70. The girl mentions that he has already grown much stronger. On top of that, the spell he obtained was perfectly suited for him, so he thanks her for the help and then asks how much money he earned from selling the items. At that moment, he realizes he made 70 million. Now he starts feeling hopeful, since reaching 500 million seems more achievable. Right then, his phone begins to ring. It was Katara's doctor. Answering in a panic, he immediately asks what happened. The doctor explains that Katara's condition suddenly worsened, and they need to speak with him. He also says she only has a few days left to live. That is because her illness has become much more severe. The guy asks the doctor to let him talk to Katara. Once connected, he asks if she is able to speak. She says yes in a weak voice, even asking if her big brother can hear her properly. He tells her not to worry, promising that he will find a way to cure her. The doctor even warns him not to say reckless things. But upon hearing her brother's words, Katara smiles and, full of hope, says she will wait for him. She thanks him, and he tells her to just hold on a little longer. After that, he hangs up, turns to the fairy, and says he needs to earn 500 million as quickly as possible, even asking if there is an A-rank dungeon. The little fairy says there is, but it would be extremely difficult, especially for him to take it on alone. But that does not matter to him. He needs results fast. The fairy tries to warn him that an A-rank dungeon is far more dangerous than a B-rank one. But the guy is not trying to hear any of that. Bro locked in. She even says he would basically be throwing his life away. Yet nothing she says can change his mind. Since she cannot convince him otherwise, the fairy decides she will support him. He thanks her, and she points him toward a specific dungeon. After purchasing the key, he opens the entrance. It was a massive tower. She explains that the boss is at the top floor, so he needs to climb all the way up. After entering, he starts walking forward cautiously. She tells him there are safe zones inside the tower where he can rest. At that moment, a massive monster approaches. This was the White Lion, the great guardian of the tower. It was the first enemy they needed to defeat. The girl explains that the recommended level to beat it is 320, while Yuri was only at level 70. She even asks if he truly believes he can defeat it. He replies that it is not about whether he thinks he can or not. He has to defeat it no matter what. He knows this will be difficult, but he has no other choice. The monster lets out a powerful roar and immediately lunges at him. He needs to gather as many items as possible to sell in exchange for money to buy that healing potion. That is why he declares he will defeat any enemy standing in his way. Yuri uses a spell called Tima, which enhances his physical abilities. With that, he lands a powerful kick on the lion. It is true that his spells do not consume mana, allowing him to boost his physical strength almost endlessly. However, the Tima ability puts a heavy strain on his body, and he does not want to push himself too far. During his fight against the Naga, he had already overloaded his body by using too much magic, so this time, he plans to be more careful. At that moment, a notification appears, stating that he has received a special quest. Ysfir points at the window, telling him to pay attention. He is surprised when he sees the mission title, "The Sky is the Limit." The objective states that he must turn this lion into his pet. In return, he would receive a reward, the summoning spell. Basically, he has to tame the lion and make it his summon. The creature charges straight at Yuri. Extending his hands, he says he will have to subdue the lion instead of killing it. And then he activates his supersonic ability. He manages to repel the lion and immediately grabs its head, slamming it into the ground. A massive explosion occurs, and he wonders if he successfully subdued the beast. However, the lion roars again, triggering another powerful blast. The boy realizes that the creature is using some kind of wind armor. Even Ysfir starts telling Yuri that this is not the time to play around. Still, he dodges the attack and tells the fairy he is not playing. She insists that the monster's level is too high, and that he will not be able to dominate it by force alone. But the protagonist says that is not true, because he can read all of the monster's movements. In the past, he had fought creatures like this many times, so he had a lot of experience, even if it was more like instinct or fragmented memory. Even without fully remembering his past, he confidently says he knows every move and will defeat it. He even apologizes to the lion before landing a powerful blow. The creature is sent flying backward and, in a rage, charges at him again, trying to devour him. With a serious expression, Yuri states that he understands all of this monster's tricks. He then uses the Divine Fists technique, unleashing a barrage of punches while ordering the beast to kneel before him. After that, he delivers an even stronger strike. The punch was so powerful that it launched the lion far away. Ysfir is left slightly shocked by her master's strength, and it becomes clear that he has actually defeated a high-rank monster. Next, he steps onto a rock and orders the lion to lie down. And just like that, the lion looks more like a tame kitten. Yeah, bro got domesticated instantly. With a bored expression, Ysfir asks how he managed to do it so easily. And just like that, he acquires a new spell called Summoning. And just like that, the lion was absorbed into his body, turning into his personal companion. After finishing that mission, another system window popped up in front of him. Inside it, there were details about items along with extra content he had just unlocked. Ysfir explains that from now on, he can convert other monsters into his familiars, just like he did with the lion. She also points out that whenever he enters dungeons, there's a chance he might trigger special quests. As he checks his status screen, he's shocked to see he gained 50 more levels. He even asks the fairy how the tower's level system works, and she gives him a smug little look. She proudly claims she knows everything about dungeons, and he gets emotional, saying she's incredibly helpful. But then she makes a disgusted face, telling him not to flatter her, and says she'll only share information if he asks properly. So the guy immediately starts begging the adorable, angel-like lady to explain how the tower functions. She tells him the place is filled with a swarm of rank B undead creatures. These monsters were seriously dangerous, so strong they made enemies from other dungeons look like toys. But our boy, not even slightly intimidated. Respect. She asks why he's acting so confident, and he replies that, honestly, this is perfect since he'll gain a ton of experience. With that, he steps through the first door. Ysfir wonders if he truly believes he can defeat all those undead. While walking forward, he simply tells her to trust him. After passing through the initial gate, he finds himself standing before the massive tower. Ysfir suddenly remembers something, and says she forgot to mention an important detail. In truth, he won't be able to leave the tower until he defeats the main boss. She even asks if he's afraid of dying, considering this tower's level is way above his own. He admits that yes, he is afraid to die, but he's even more terrified of failing to save his little sister. The fairy teases him, calling him a total siscon. Basically, that's slang for an overly protective big brother. As they enter deeper into the tower, the door shuts behind them, sealing him inside. When he looks back, he notices sealing marks carved into the doors. Yeah, no turning back now. Ysfir warns him that the undead are already heading straight toward them. At that moment, he releases his aura and activates his summoning ability. The great white lion appears, and he orders it to charge directly at the undead. Like a lightning bolt, the lion rushes forward, devouring every monster in its path. Yuri gets hyped, since this lion is insanely powerful. However, it quickly becomes clear that the zombies seem endless, just keep spawning like a bad game mode. So he commands the lion to dash right into the middle of them. The beast stops at the very center of the room. With a serious expression, he orders the white lion to petrify itself. Instantly, it turns into a crystal-like statue. When the monsters try to bite it, a massive explosion erupts. Isfir asks how he even knew about that ability. Holding his sword, Yuri replies that he somehow just knew. Right after that, he channels the power of the demonic sword he got from the Naga and infuses it with sacred energy, producing a blinding light. Spheri is stunned, saying her master is incredibly clever, since now he's dealing holy magic damage to dark creatures. He then dashes forward like a flash, and with a single swing of his blade, he wipes out all the remaining monsters. He literally eliminated every single one in a single attack. No survivors, no complaints. Looking proud, he declares that the extermination is complete. Right after, the lion runs over for affection, and he praises it for doing an excellent job. Ysfir, still surprised, asks how her master knows all these techniques. She even gets a bit jealous, since he's giving all his attention to the lion. Soon after, it's revealed that he has reached level 240. He basically doubled his level and still managed to gather tons of items. At that moment, he turns serious and asks Ysfir if selling all these items will be enough to reach the 500 million he needs for the medicine. She does the math and tells him he now has a total of 600 million, which is more than enough. He wants to leave the dungeon immediately to buy the medicine and save his sister, but the fairy reminds him that he can't exit until the main boss is defeated. And yeah, she wasn't joking. He places his hand on his chin, thinking about the fastest way to reach the top floor. Then he looks upward, notices something, and tells the fairy to look up as well. They realize they're already at the highest level. Plot twist moment. The fairy says she doesn't understand what he means, so he explains that it's just a normal ceiling, which means there's nowhere higher to go. She asks if he's implying that the dungeon's main boss is actually underground, and then remembers that this hidden rank A dungeon contains a Reaper. Yuri agrees, saying the monster is probably below them and that the Reaper must be hiding there. Since he already gathered enough money to save his sister and needs to act fast, he says he'll break through the floor to reach the boss. The girl immediately says that won't work. That's because the Reaper is the supreme ruler of the undead, and the recommended level to face it is 550. In other words, he would need roughly double his current level to stand a chance. She even warns that if he tries to fight it at his current level of 240, he'll definitely be wiped out. But with a steady gaze, he tells her to just trust him. The creature wielded a ghost-like form of magic, so he opens his skill tree and starts searching for a spell effective against that kind of enemy. Since he had gained a huge amount of level points, he reallocates all his abilities to prepare for defeating this boss. After finishing the redistribution, he tells Ysfir that he's ready. Right after that, he begins gathering energy to smash through the ground. And then, a massive explosion erupts. He manages to break through and descend to the lower level. This guy literally shattered every floor beneath him, and when he finally lands down there, he casually says it was nice finding such a shortcut. Bro skipped the whole dungeon like it was optional DLC. The fairy asks if he's not going to defeat the monsters on the lower floors, and he simply replies that he'll just beat the boss and leave. And sure enough, sitting on a throne, the undead Reaper was waiting for him. That terrifying creature raises its hand, sending a wave of skeletons rushing toward Yuri. He notices the swarm of skeletons closing in, so he activates a perception blocking technique. This ability makes his body take on a ghostly state, causing the skeletons to ignore his presence. He basically mimics a skill similar to the Reaper's, blending in among the spirits. But this monster could still recognize that trick. As it grips its scythe, the creature lunges toward him. The monster suddenly teleports and appears right beside him. Yeah, personal space? Never heard of it. In his past life, he had fought many Reapers, so deep within his subconscious he knew exactly how they moved. Using the technique known as the Eye of Wisdom, he immediately launches a counterattack. He had just unlocked this ability through the skill tree he recently upgraded. This magical Eye of Wisdom granted him an initial form, enhancing his capability to battle undead enemies. Since the Reaper lacked a physical body, he needed abilities like this to actually deal damage. Now with the Eye of Wisdom activated, he draws his blade. He only needed to land a single decisive strike to defeat the monster, but the creature keeps vanishing and reappearing behind him. At that moment, he narrowly dodges the Reaper's scythe. The enemy was incredibly fast, but with his enhanced vision, he could at least track the creature's mana. If he could pinpoint the exact moment, he'd be able to land a hit. The Reaper begins darting around him at high speed, and suddenly he senses its presence on his right side and unleashes his strongest attack. His blade connects with the creature's shoulder. He managed to land a hit, but it likely caused minimal damage. He realizes he'll need to land multiple strikes to defeat this enemy, not just one. So he prepares to attack again. But at the last second, the monster disappears and teleports behind him. In the past, he didn't have a weakness like emotional vulnerability. That's why he was able to defeat the Reaper so easily before. Now, however, he is trapped in an illusion, as the Reaper targets his greatest weakness. He sees his little sister suffering in the hospital, and within the illusion, she ends up dying, pushing him into complete despair. He finds himself lying down, calling out for Katara, while the Reaper moves in to strike him with its scythe. And just like that, he gets hit, taking a direct slash. That Reaper was playing dirty, no honor at all. The monster even sits back on its throne, as if victory is already guaranteed, wearing a disgusting grin. This illusion was causing Yuri intense emotional pain. In his past life, he had no emotional bonds with anyone. That's why the monster couldn't use illusions like this against him before. If he were to die inside this tower, his sister would also die, since she wouldn't get the medicine. At that moment, he recalls a memory of Katara calling out to him. She was saying how beautiful a certain song was, and while showing him the sheet music, the little girl says she would play it for him. She then sits at the piano and begins performing a lovely melody. Yuri, filled with pride, gently pats her head and tells her she's very talented. Meanwhile, in the hospital, the girl was taking her final breaths. Her condition had already become critical, and she begins to speak regretfully, saying she had a happy life with her brother. Crying heavily, she laments not being able to spend more time with him. Her body could no longer withstand the illness, but she didn't want to die. She breaks down in desperate tears. Yuri watches all of this unfold and realizes that this is no longer an illusion, it's reality. If he doesn't make it in time with the medicine, Katara will die. A system window appears, asking if he wants to remove a forbidden restriction. Ysfir also sees the window and is left shocked. The monster tries to finish him off before he can completely remove that restriction. If he fails to defeat the Reaper, both he and his sister will lose their lives. So he clicks the notification, fully lifting the restriction. At that instant, a massive explosion erupts as he delivers a devastating strike to the monster. The creature is slammed violently against its own altar. He had just activated his Archmage power. Gripping his radiant staff tightly, he faces the Reaper as it charges in for a final attack. But Yuri apologizes, saying he's about to blow up the entire dungeon. And then, a colossal explosion detonates right above the Reaper's head. That attack is overwhelmingly powerful, completely destroying the dungeon along with its core crystal. Right after he appears outside his apartment and leaps off the building. Guys, he needed to reach the hospital as fast as possible. Landing on another rooftop, he tells Katara that he'll be there soon. And just like that, he takes off running at lightning speed. Meanwhile, at the hospital, the doctors were in a state of panic. A nurse shouts for Katara to hold on, saying her brother is on his way. The girl keeps calling out for Yuri, afraid she won't get the chance to say goodbye. The doctor starts calling him, asking if he's already on his way. His phone keeps ringing, but at that moment, he's busy purchasing the elixir, spending the 500 million he worked so hard to gather. He confirms the purchase by pressing the notification, obtaining the item. The guy is running at full speed, no slowing down. If he doesn't make it in time, his sister will die. Meanwhile, at the hospital, it seems like the girl is about to take her final breath. She was extremely weak and could barely breathe. The nurse assumed she wouldn't even get the chance to say goodbye to her brother. The doctor kept lamenting the fact that they couldn't save the girl. At the very least, she would pass away peacefully. Right at that moment, Yuri suddenly pushed open the door to her room. The doctor told him she was already taking her final breaths and urged him to hurry if he wanted to say goodbye. However, in a calm voice, he stated that he had arrived just in time. The doctor asked what he meant by that, and then Yuri lifted his sister's small body, which made the doctor furious since he had removed the oxygen machine keeping her alive. They even started questioning what the boy thought he was doing. At that moment, he poured that sacred liquid into her mouth, and just like that, an intense light began to shine. Yuri realized that the medicine was actually working. At that exact moment, Katara opened her eyes. He asked his little sister if she was okay, and with a shocked expression, Katara called out to her big brother. He immediately broke into tears and tightly embraced his sister, holding her as if he'd never let go. If this doesn't deserve a like, I honestly don't know what does. You can go ahead and comment if this scene hit you right in the feels. Later on, he explained to the doctor exactly what he had done to heal her. The doctor thanked him and even mentioned that surprisingly, she didn't seem to have any after effects, adding that she would likely be discharged early the next morning. It was fascinating that something like this even existed in the world, a remedy found inside a dungeon capable of curing any illness. The doctor even admitted he had never heard of such an elixir, but if something like that really existed in dungeons, then it was incredible news. He also commented on how mysterious these dungeons truly were. The boy agreed, saying that was indeed the case. Early the next morning, he left the hospital together with Katara. The girl stretched her arms and said it felt amazing to breathe in the fresh air. He asked if she was feeling all right, and she replied that her body felt wonderful and that she wasn't in pain anymore. He told his sister he was going to call a taxi. However, she said she didn't want to go back by car and added that she would prefer to walk since she had been lying down for so long. But Yuri pointed out that their home was very far away and it would take a long time to get there. With a small laugh, she said that if she got tired, he could just carry her on his back. He said she was impossible but ended up agreeing to walk anyway. She hugged her big brother, and just like that, they started heading home together. On the way, he suggested they stop somewhere to eat and asked if she wanted to go to a restaurant. But instead, she simply said she wanted to eat his homemade curry. He told her she didn't need to hold back anymore since they weren't poor now. But she replied that wasn't the reason. In truth, she just wanted to eat the food he used to make. Of course, that made him happy, since it showed how much she cared. And because of that, they decided to stop by the market first to buy ingredients. She was overjoyed and even asked if she could get some pudding, and he told her she could have as many as she wanted. When they finally got home, she was full of excitement, practically celebrating. However, she heard a noise coming from the bathroom and immediately went to open the door, while our hero grew nervous, wondering what that strange light was. Still, he already knew Ysfir was inside and rushed to stop his sister from seeing the fairy, but it was already too late. Katara opened the door and saw the fairy relaxing in a bath. He couldn't help but regret it, since his sister had now discovered the fairy. Ysfir was fully enjoying the human world and even commented on how amazing these technologies were. A bit startled, Katara asked what exactly that fairy was, while the fairy looked slightly embarrassed. The fairy then asked if this girl was her master's little sister, and whether she was already feeling better. She clarified that she wasn't just any fairy, but rather introduced herself as the personal fairy of her older brother. Katara turned to her brother, asking if that was really true, and he confirmed it. Curious as ever, Katara started firing off a bunch of questions at Ysfir. The two got along surprisingly well, and the fairy even remarked that Katara seemed very polite, unlike her brother, which made the girl laugh. Honestly, she didn't even hesitate with that roast. Relieved, Yuri thought it was a good thing they were getting along, and after placing the groceries on the table, he said he would start preparing dinner. Soon after, they all sat down to enjoy the delicious meal. She took a spoonful, her face lighting up instantly, and shouted that her brother's cooking was amazing. It had been a long time since she ate something like this, and he felt incredibly satisfied, saying all the effort had been worth it. His delicious cooking made her feel like she was truly alive again. Then Ysfir joked that since she had almost died, it made sense she was enjoying the food so much. That joke was wild, not gonna lie. Katara burst into laughter. Yuri thought the joke was a bit too dark, but thankfully Katara found it funny. Meanwhile, an urgent news broadcast suddenly interrupted the program. The report announced an emergency message for all residents of Tokyo. A massive dungeon had appeared right in the center of the city, and it was ranked A. Because of that, they were recruiting every available clan to clear it. Katara was shocked upon hearing this. Recently, multiple dungeons had been appearing, and Yuri mentioned that it would probably take a while to clear this one due to its high rank. Suddenly, a window appeared in front of Yuri, informing him that he had received an urgent mission. He was caught off guard, especially when he saw that the mission had a difficulty rating of 6 stars. His objective was to clear the dungeon, with a time limit of 28 days. He started doubting it, even thinking it was strange for such a mission to appear, especially at the exact same time as that news broadcast. Spirit suggested that it was probably connected to the very dungeon being reported. The fairy also warned that if he failed to complete the mission, he would suffer multiple penalties. Katara, who couldn't see any of these status windows, kept asking her brother what he was doing. Knowing she couldn't see them, he tried to play it off casually. After that, he told her to relax and finish her meal. Later, once she had already fallen asleep, he went to his room and started thinking about the mission that had appeared for him. There were only a few days left for him to complete it. Spirit kept warning that if he failed to finish the mission, he might receive a very harsh penalty. However, she had no idea what kind of punishment it could be. Still, she believed that after he removed that restriction during the fight against the Reaper, it may have triggered some consequences. He said that he didn't want to keep entering dungeons anymore, but it seemed like that would be his fate from now on. The fairy asked if he had any plan or even a guess about what he should do. It was an extremely difficult mission, rated at 6 stars, and he suspected it might be connected to his past, especially since a power as great as the one he gained would never come without a cost. During the battle against the Reaper, he broke that restriction, and now he would have to pay the price for the strength he had obtained. The girl said that didn't make any sense at all. In other words, according to him, it was as if this power system called the Forbidden Restriction was controlling his entire destiny. She seemed to understand and suggested that maybe his power had been granted by the gods, and now he would have to repay it by clearing dungeons. He agreed, saying that might actually be the case. She looked surprised, realizing that he would now have to constantly fight monsters. It was almost as if he had become enslaved in some way. He didn't want to spend his life battling monsters, but that was the price he had to pay for saving his sister. The next day, the girl got dressed and prepared to return to school after such a long time, saying goodbye to him before leaving. He said goodbye to his sister as well, wishing her a good day, and she happily headed off to school. At that moment, he thought that it would be worth spending the rest of his life fighting monsters, as long as his sister could grow up happy. The following day, he went to the Adventurers Guild. When he arrived, he told the receptionist that he wanted to take the exam to be promoted to rank A. They asked if he was serious about skipping from rank F straight to rank A, and he confirmed that he was. They went to the back and started whispering, saying that crazy people like him showed up from time to time. He could hear everything they were saying, but he didn't care. Since he had grown stronger by training alone in dungeons, no one knew about his achievements, and there was no way to tell how powerful he was just by looking at him. Yeah, bro really looked like an NPC, not gonna lie. Just based on his appearance, no one would think he could fight in those group dungeons. First, he would normally need to join a clan, but no one would accept someone at rank F. The initial test required him to place his hand on a crystal sphere to measure his level. He stepped forward and did exactly that. The attendant thought there must have been an error, since the result showed his level was above 240. Breaking into a cold sweat, she told him he had passed the test and would now need to complete a practical exam. He was instructed to wait in the hall until his name was called. At that moment, he overheard an argument nearby. A boy was telling a much stronger man that he wasn't responsible for their defeat in that dungeon. But the rank A adventurer insisted that the boy was to blame, since he was the support and had failed to heal them. However, the boy argued back, pointing out that everyone else had been wiped out, leaving only the 2 of them alive. That didn't mean that he, the weakest member of the group, should take all the blame. But the leader got angry and pushed all the responsibility onto him. The kid stood his ground, boldly saying that the guy was just trying to shift the blame. Furious, the rank bully charged at the boy. But right then, Yuri stepped in and stopped the attack. The man demanded to know who that newbie was, and the protagonist replied that he was just a passing adventurer. The man told him not to stick his nose where it didn't belong, but the protagonist responded that he couldn't just stand by and watch someone stronger take advantage of someone weaker. That man was called Rizak, a very powerful rank adventurer. At that moment, the loudspeakers called for Rizak, and he walked away saying he would settle things later with the newbie who had interfered. Yeah, bro really scheduled revenge like a meeting. The boy thanked Yuri and apologized for dragging him into the situation. The protagonist asked what had happened between them, and the boy said it was a long story. In short, he and Rizak belonged to the same clan, known as the Red Dragons. They had gone on a mission to defeat a very powerful monster in a dungeon, but all their teammates had been killed, leaving only the two of them alive. However, Rizak, who was the leader and the strongest member, started blaming the boy for everything. Yuri said that was truly terrible. Just then, the loudspeaker called Yuri's name for the practical exam. The boy grew nervous, saying that it would probably be Rizak fighting him, which would basically guarantee his defeat. Rizak was an extremely powerful and ruthless rank A adventurer. Because of that, he told Yuri it would be better to give up on taking the test today. But Yuri said he was actually very strong, even if his appearance didn't show it, though the boy didn't seem very convinced. Right after that, the protagonist headed toward the arena to take the test and see if he could rank up. When Rizak realized it was that same rookie, he burst out laughing and said he wouldn't let the newbie walk away unharmed, since he had stuck his nose where it didn't belong. But Yuri replied that he was actually glad to find out this guy would be his opponent, since he wouldn't need to hold back against someone as rough as him. Hearing that, the guy got irritated, and just like that, the practical exam began, with him immediately charging at our hero. He threw an incredibly powerful punch that ended up shattering parts of the arena. At that moment, Yuri understood he couldn't treat this fight lightly. He leaped back to dodge the attacks, while the man activated a gravity pill. Using gravitational force, he pulled the protagonist toward him and prepared a punch to finish him off. However, Yuri dodged at the very last second, placed his hand on the man's shoulder, and flipped behind him. He moved with impressive agility, clearly catching the brute off guard. The guy even laughed, saying the rookie had just gotten lucky by dodging. Yuri then asked if that ability he just used was gravity manipulation. The man admitted that the kid was sharp for figuring out his technique. At that moment, the brute began charging another attack, declaring that he would end the rookie's adventurer career right there. Yuri knew he had to take this fight seriously, or he would actually die. So he activated that special ability that greatly enhanced his physical strength. The man realized that this rookie wasn't just some weakling, and said he would finish him quickly before he became a bigger problem later. With a smirk, Yuri replied that wouldn't happen even in his dreams. Clenching his chest proudly, the man declared he would crush the rookie's arrogance and charged forward using gravitational prison. The protagonist's body suddenly felt 100 times heavier, yet he still managed to evade the attack. The pressure was so intense that the ground started cracking, and he soon realized his body was being pinned down, forcing him to block instead of dodging. Even so, the force sent him flying backward, and right after that the man kicked his arm, launching him even farther away. Still, Yuri managed to land safely, bracing himself against the pressure with his hands. At that moment, he activated the Wisdomized technique to anticipate and block Rizak's attack. The man once again manipulated gravity, directing all the pressure straight toward Yuri. However, Yuri stretched out his arm and stopped the attack. Rizak was shocked, asking how the boy had interrupted his gravitational pull. But to truly eliminate him, he would need to use his strongest move. However, the loudspeaker suddenly announced that the practical exam had ended. The protagonist simply turned around. The man shouted that their fight wasn't over yet, but Yuri responded that the announcement had declared the match finished, so he was leaving, since he didn't care about continuing the fight. His goal was to become a rank A adventurer, and just like that, he walked away, while the man remained furious, wanting to continue the battle. He even swore that one day he would finish the fight they had started. He got so angry that he started smashing the arena with his fists. Outside the arena, Yuri received a card symbolizing his promotion to rank A. He thanked them, and the boy came running over, asking if everything had gone well. The protagonist said yes, confirming that he had passed the exam. The boy mentioned that it was rare for Rizak to finish a fight without leaving his opponent badly injured. But when he looked at Yuri, he noticed that the boy didn't have a single scratch. With a laugh, the protagonist said that was simply because he was strong. The boy then warned him that Rizak was known for being extremely stubborn. So he told him to stay alert, because that bully might show up someday looking for revenge. Now, he needed to focus on finding a clan to explore that dungeon. Outside, he started checking his phone. Now that he was rank A, he needed to join a clan. He considered teaming up with that boy, the glasses-wearing warrior Takai, or even Issa. But at that moment, he felt a strong demonic pressure approaching him. People began screaming in panic, telling everyone to run. The alarm started blaring, and the loudspeakers instructed all civilians to retreat immediately and seek emergency shelter. Yuri realized that his plans would have to change, since multiple monsters had escaped from the dungeons and were now roaming the city. With a serious expression, he said he would put an end to this quickly. And with that, we wrap up the first part of this story. Guys, if you made it this far, I'm sure you really enjoyed this story, and since it has plenty of chapters, I definitely want to bring you the continuation. But for that, we need to hit the goal. So go ahead and comment Archmage of the System. The more comments you leave, the faster I'll bring the next part. Huge thanks to everyone who's been commenting, and if you want to support even more, consider becoming a member. Members get early access to videos. Plus, you'll also get exclusive content. I'll leave 2 recommended videos here on the card that I'm sure you'll enjoy. So I'll see you over there. That's it for now. Thanks, and see you next time, everyone.